Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tennyson E Stead, writer and director of Quantum Theory. And today I'd like to offer another brief note to actors and discuss specifically taking direction. Last week we talked a little bit about mugging, which is essentially the practice of demonstrative acting, showing tone, showing emotion, or showing the work that we've done to make a performance good so that the audience can see what's happening in the scene. And we covered how that's not productive. And we also talked just very briefly about how a lot of directors will actually ask actors for mugging because, and this is something I really implore actors to keep in mind, directors, especially in Hollywood and especially today, do not always have acting training, and they don't always know either what they want or how to ask for it. And that goes counter to a lot of what actors are trained to do, especially when they study acting in boot camps and film study collaboratives around town. You know what I'm saying? If you study in theater, you are, by and large, giving yourself an overall vocabulary of performance. The more different acting styles you study, the better that vocabulary gets and the more habits you build into your system. If you study exclusively film acting, then what you're being taught to do is whatever the director tells you to do. And again, directors don't know necessarily how scene work is supposed to work. As an actor, you are actually the expert in that situation. You're the person who's supposed to walk in with all the expertise. You're the person who's supposed to know how to solve problems when it comes to performance. Now, it's also very bad form by and large in Hollywood to tell a director that they're wrong or to tell them they need something different than what they think they need. So how do we resolve that conflict? And what I would suggest is that actors rely on their understanding of motivation and their understanding of scene work in interpreting what the director is telling them. And the thing that you have to do to make this practice work to your advantage is just step out of the moment that you're having with the director just a little bit. Let your scene study brain go to work on the situation that you're in. Because if you can understand the director's motivation, if you can understand what it is the director is trying to accomplish in the scene instead of what they're actually asking for, and if you can extrapolate based on what you know about this person and their vocabulary, and frankly, there are cues that you can pick up on. If you've studied a lot of acting, you know who studied certain styles because people, for example, and this is just a generalization, you'll gain a sense for it, but people who have studied a lot of Meisner technique have very direct eye contact. People who have had a lot of movement training, they're very loose with their bodies. People who have a lot of vocal training, you can always tell because they never fail to speak from their diaphragms and put their voice exactly where they want it to go. When a director hasn't had any training at all, it's noticeable. You know, if they haven't had any classical training, maybe they don't understand stakes as well as somebody else. Maybe they don't put themselves into situations where the stakes are different than what's happening in daily life as readily. You can see those kinds of habits in people. So read your directors. Get a sense of where your directors are coming from in terms of what kind of performance training they've had or haven't had. Okay? Don't be afraid to look at your directors critically as performers. Because once you understand what training that director has or has not had, you begin to understand what their performance vocabulary is like. Now, that's not going to be necessary if the director is very learned and if the director understands how to communicate with you as a performer and meet you on the grounds of whatever your educational history is in performance. But if the director is not learned, if the director is a commercial director or coming from some film school, someplace where they just haven't been exposed to a lot of acting or acting technique, or even if they're using words they don't quite understand, if they have been exposed to those techniques but didn't really digest them, don't really understand what they mean, and they're just trying to speak your language, if you can sense that, get a sense of where those limitations are, then you can begin to understand what these directors might be trying to ask you for and failing to ask you for instead of just the line readings or whatever else. Now, once you have a sense of maybe where the director is coming from, obviously, if the director is asking you for something very specific, you need to take time and give the director what they're asking for just to show them that you're a collaborator in the process. You always, if you're dealing with somebody who isn't able to communicate with you as quickly, sort of running off the rails on them can scare them and frustrate them. The fact that you're much more competent than they are means that you're actually driving the relationship even if you don't realize it. So you need to make sure and pull them with you. Give them what they're asking for just so they can see, okay, this actor's working with me. And if they're not being specific, or if they're taking a long time to explain it, it's okay just to say, hey, I have an idea? Can I try something? And then use that moment that you've given yourself to try and solve the problem that the director is actually trying to wrap their head around. Try, if you can, and work the problem the director's trying to get to, instead of just offering the solution that the director is providing you with. Because fundamentally, unless your director is awesome or you suck, you're going to be a better actor than your director, which means you're going to be better at solving scene work problems than your director, which means your job here is to use your toolbox and the full range of your experience to help solve the problems the director is identifying in the production, because the director's got their picture, set wide. They're looking at the big picture of everybody's work and all the performances and all the designs and everything, all the camera work and everything that's happening in the scene. And you're there to make sure that your piece of that equation is as functionally exquisite as it can possibly be. Don't be afraid to exercise that authority to the fullest degree that your relationship with that director and your presence on that set allows you to. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I've got an idea, I'd like to try something. Because ultimately, if you can solve that problem for the director, your solution is probably going to be more specific and more sophisticated than whatever it is the director gives you, especially if they're resorting to line readings. Then they have no idea what you're doing. They don't know how to talk to you, and they don't know what your job is, and they have no idea what you're capable of. So the second you start to hear line readings, know that the director's at the end of their rope, and actually they need you to solve the problem for them. You know what I mean? Actors oftentimes will turn to a director to solve a performance problem. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a collaboration. But know that you are the expert on your character. Your job is to walk into that room and be the authority figure on your performance so that nobody else has to worry about it. Don't be afraid to offer the director solutions. And don't be afraid to tell the director there's something you can try that might solve more than one of their problems at once. Don't be afraid to tell the director, hey, I think I got what you're getting at. Can I try something, see if it works for you? Go there. Help them solve the problem. Don't just give them the performance they're asking for. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I've seen a lot of really bad direction ruin perfectly good actors, get actors questioning their craft, questioning everything they thought they knew, questioning whether or not they're any good, when in actuality the director just doesn't have any understanding what actors do or how to communicate with them. And it's important that you remember that that happens all the time in this town. So if you meet somebody like that, the best thing that you can do for the show, and the best thing you can do for yourself, and the best thing that you can do for that director is, first of all, within yourself, maintain your authority. Remember that you're the person who's been training 30 years or 20 years or whatever it is to do this, and that you have a sense of what your body can do and probably why they cast you even. And then, use that expertise. Go ahead and say, hey, I think I can help here. I think I can help there. Give me a chance, and I think I can solve these problems for you efficiently and with a level up involved. You know what I mean? Go for the level up. Don't just try and deliver on the bar that the director's setting, because the director may not know how to set bars when it comes to performance. Just be open to the possibility that you know more than the director does. And even if it doesn't work out on that set, even if once in a while you get in a little bit of trouble because you opened your big mouth, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to wind up a lot more sane, and you're going to question your work a lot less, and the people who you wind up helping will be very, very grateful for your expertise. So, And on top of that, you won't drive yourself crazy wondering if everything you ever learned is wrong. If you just remember that maybe the director never learned anything about acting at all. Just remember, it does happen more frequently than you want it to. Be prepared to help. That's the end of this blog. Thank you for coming. If you like what I have to say here on the 8-Sided blog, give us a subscribe, give us a like over here, right? Give us a little subscribe. And in the next couple weeks, we're heading towards production on Declassified, which is a Cold War science fiction web series that I'm producing with Gerard Marzilli. Well, the first season anyway. And it's a series of stories from the Cold War and from the space race, all documentary footage. Documentary footage. It's not a real thing that happened, that's what the quotes are. Okay, but the point is, we're doing these documentary style science fiction seasons, each around a project undertaken by a, again, fictional government agency called the Bureau of Applied Defense Development. First season is about Project Icarus, which is the story of astronaut Wick Pierce, who we in the 1977 sent on an 8-year, one-man mission to Saturn's moon of Titan in an Apollo command module that's all cramped with, life support equipment. So stuck in a chair for 8 years trying to keep his body, his mind, and his spacecraft in working order in the condition that it's going to take to actually land the thing. And these are the sort of transmissions back to Earth. Only 12 of them. It's not all 8 years of transmissions. It'll be about 24 minutes of content altogether, and we're pretty excited. It's an intriguing show. It's challenging science fiction. It's challenging performance work, and I think people are going to really dig it. So, give us a subscribe, and we'll make sure you're aware when the first episode goes live. Follow us at 8-Sided Films on Twitter, and you can find us at 8-Sided Films on Facebook. And thank you for watching, and have a great evening. Take care. Bye-bye.